We're under pressure and we're dealing with hypertension in Durham County. So we're talking about the pressure to reduce high blood pressure as well as the pressure to reduce health disparities surrounding hypertension. I am Neha. And my gift is one of Mr. Worldwide, aka Pitbull, aka Mr. 305, because I like to bring creativity to the team.
I'm Will, and I chose a failed dive because I always dive in with enthusiasm, but I sometimes fail.
My name's Rylie, and my GIF is Milla from The Tonight Show because I bring enthusiasm to the team.
Hi, my name is Noyah, and the GIF that I chose is the famous vine of the baby getting an avocado for Christmas because I'm the baby of the group.
Hypertension is defined as high blood pressure or blood pressure reading of 130/80 mmHg or higher. So essentially, the blood's force against artery walls is consistently too high, and this can lead to increased risk of heart attack, stroke, or other health issues. There are a few things that are helpful in prevention and reduction of hypertension, including diet, which looks like limiting sodium and saturated fat intake, as well as regular exercise. So this can cause reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressures, with as much as 5 to 7 mmHg reductions in those with hypertension. And hypertension impacts over 116 million Americans.
Just for some context, Durham County is North Carolina's 6th most populous county, and the city of Durham is the 4th largest municipality in the state. The population of Durham County is 267,587 in 2010. Over the previous decade, the county's population has grown by more than 41,500 people, representing an increase of about 20%. This increase accounted 11 new residents and 5 new households for every day of the past 10 years. Natural growth accounted for a little more than 1/3 of the increase, while net migration accounted for a little less than 2/3. Much of Durham County's growth occurred within the city of Durham. The city's population grew from 187,000 to 228,000 during the period 2000 to 2010, representing a decade-long increase of 22%. By the end of the calendar year in 2015, Durham's county population had grown to 293,000. The city of Durham's population increased to 252,000 during that same period. The prevalence of hypertension is 42%, with a strong association with residential racial isolation, suggesting opportunities to intervene at a neighborhood level to reduce hypertension disparities and improve overall population health. Racial isolation of non-Hispanic Black patients was associated with increased odds of hypertension among both non-Hispanic Black and non-Hispanic white patients. Further research is needed to identify latent spatiality pattern factors contributing to hypertension.
So now we're going to look into some of the determinants that affect hypertension among Blacks in Durham County. And we're going to look at both intermediary and structural determinants. Intermediary determinants being more proximal to the individual, and structural determinants being more distal to the individual. And we're also going to look at some of the reasons that these impact health outcomes and health inequalities and hypertension. The two main structural determinants we found to have a big effect on hypertension among Blacks in Durham County are racial residential segregation and socioeconomic status at the big policy level. And racial residential segregation connects to a lot of other structural determinants, such as redlining, food swamps, food deserts, transportation, and income. And a Duke Bass Connections team in 2019 did a study on the relationship between racial residential segregation in Durham County and hypertension, and found racial isolation of non-Hispanic Blacks to be associated with increased odds of hypertension. And so to talk about redlining a little bit, redlining has historical roots in post-Depression home loans and the government restricting loans to Black families in higher value neighborhoods while simultaneously not investing in the neighborhoods that Blacks were allowed to buy home loans in. And this has functioned over decades to prevent Blacks from building generational wealth. And so redlining really connects to racial residential segregation as one of the main structural elements of it. Food swamps and food deserts both describe physical access to healthy food. Food deserts are areas where there is little to no access to affordable, nutritious food. And according to Durham Health Innovations, 11% of Durham's whites live in food deserts, while 19% of Durham's blacks do. So a significant amount more blacks live in food deserts than whites, which contributes to these racial disparities and hypertension outcomes, because your diet can have a big effect on your blood pressure. Food swamps are areas where there's an abundance of affordable but high caloric and unhealthy food. So a lot of these neighborhoods that blacks are constrained to may not necessarily be food deserts, but they're food swamps, meaning they have not the healthiest food, which again can contribute to high blood pressure. Transportation is another structural factor that could play a role in the development of hypertension in racially segregated communities. Without stable means of transportation, access to things like healthy food options and exercise options is made more difficult, and hypertension can be a result. Income is another important structural determinant, and racial residential segregation can have an effect on this as well, as redlining can prohibit individuals from working jobs in areas outside of their neighborhood if they don't have transportation. And then socioeconomic status is the other larger, higher level policy determinant that we found to have an effect on hypertension outcomes. Lower socioeconomic position could confine black communities to these neighborhoods and make it harder for them to move to a place with more access to healthy food and exercise options. And it also affects their social class, having an effect on all of these other determinants like transportation, income, really just access to all of these things that can make their hypertension outcomes more negative.
All these structural elements work together to influence intermediary determinants. These are material circumstances such as living conditions. The lowered housing conditions in these neighborhoods could be contributing to the health disparity we are seeing. Another is time. This is to exercise and to cook healthy meals. Stress is another determinant that can affect hypertension, as higher levels of stress are associated with increased blood pressure. Lastly, physical access to green spaces and exercise options. Without these aspects that promote the healthy, balanced lifestyle, hypertension is more likely. It's also interesting to think about the buffering effect that something like social cohesion could have on the interdeterminary determinants. In the context of racial residential segregation, social cohesion between members of segregated black communities could have a positive effect on health, decreasing the determinamental impact of the intermediate determinants of the hypertension outcomes.
So after hearing all of this, are we still under pressure? The answer is yes. These issues are going to take a lot of time and effort to solve. However, with these determinants laid out and better kept in mind, those working in healthcare and health provision throughout Durham County and the state of North Carolina can more readily and effectively begin to relieve the pressure of high blood pressure itself and the socioeconomic disparities that come with it.